Jake Morrison walked through the long hallways of the Galactic Council building. The walls were made of some strange crystal that glowed with soft blue light. He had been here many times before, but today felt different. Today would be the last time he came here as Earth's ambassador. The meeting room was huge. Hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows that went up to the ceiling. Jake recognized most of them by now. The tall, snake-like Zephyrians with their shiny scales. The gray Vorthons with their big black eyes and thin bodies. The blue-skinned Kalani, who always looked angry about something. Jake took his seat in the bottom row, the human section. It was always in the bottom row, far from the important aliens who sat up high. Captain Lisa Jang sat next to him. She was Earth's military representative, a tough woman who had fought in 3 border wars before coming here. "Are you sure about this?" Lisa whispered to him. Jake nodded. He had thought about this for months. Actually, he had thought about it for years. Ever since he first came to this place and realized how the aliens really saw humans. The council speaker called for order. Thexana was a massive Zephyrian, almost 10 feet tall, with scales that changed color when she was angry. Right now, they were a deep red. Not a good sign. "We will now vote on Motion 4471, Thexana announced. Her voice was like metal scraping against stone. "The restriction of human expansion beyond the Sol system." Jake felt his hands ball into fists. This was it. The thing they had been building up to for months. The aliens wanted to lock humanity in their home system like animals in a cage. One by one, the alien representatives stood to speak. They all said the same things they always said. Humans were too young, too violent, too unpredictable. They needed more time to grow up before they could be trusted with the galaxy. The Vorthon Chancellor spoke in his flat, emotionless voice. Humans show concerning levels of aggression. In the past 50 years, they have engaged in 12 military conflicts. This is far above the galactic average. Jake wanted to laugh. 12 conflicts in 50 years. The Zephyrians had wiped out 3 entire species in the last century, but somehow that was different. When aliens killed, it was for the good of the galaxy. When humans fought, it was because they were savages. The Kalani representative was next. Her blue skin was darker than usual, which meant she was excited. "Human expansion threatens the established order. They do not follow proper protocols. They ignore safety regulations. They take risks that endanger everyone." More of the same. Jake had heard it all before. Humans were too this, too that. Never good enough. Never smart enough. Never civilized enough. But the worst part was not what they said. It was how they said it. Like they were talking about children who had broken something valuable. Patient but firm voices explaining why the children could not be trusted with grown-up things. The vote was not even close. 734 in favor of the restrictions, 12 against. Most of those 12 were small species who depended on human trade routes. Thexana's scales shifted to a satisfied gold color. "The motion passes. Humans will remain within the Sol system until they demonstrate proper civilizational maturity. We estimate this will take approximately 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Jake stared up at the alien faces looking down at him. Some looked pleased. Others looked bored, like this had been a waste of their time. None of them looked like they cared what this meant for humanity. Jake stood up slowly. The movement caught Thexana's attention. Her large eyes focused on him. "Does the human representative wish to make a statement?" she asked. Her tone suggested she hoped he would just sit down and accept the decision quietly. "Yes," Jake said. His voice was calm, but Lisa could see the anger burning in his eyes. "I do." The room got quiet. Even the aliens who had been whispering to each other stopped talking. "For 30 years, Earth has been a member of this council," Jake began. "We have followed your rules. We have accepted your guidance. We have contributed Our knowledge, our resources, and our people to the common good. He paused and looked around the room. And what have we gotten in return? No one answered. They all knew where this was going. We have been treated like pets, Jake continued. Useful pets that can do tricks, but pets nonetheless. You take our medical advances and claim credit for them. You use our agricultural techniques to feed your worlds. You copy our engineering solutions when your own technology fails. Thexana's scales were turning red again. Human, you will watch your tone. No, Jake said firmly. I will not. The word echoed through the chamber. Lisa shifted in her seat, ready to grab Jake if the aliens decided to take action. For 30 years, we have waited for you to treat us as equals, Jake said. We thought that if we proved ourselves worthy, you would eventually accept us. We were wrong. He turned to face Thexana directly. You will never see us as equals because you cannot imagine that we might be better than you at anything. You cannot accept that a young species might have ideas you never thought of. This is enough, Chancellor Vextar interrupted. Sit down. Human. No, Jake repeated. We are done sitting down. We are done waiting for your permission. We are done pretending that this council represents anything other than your own fear of change. He took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been building up to for months. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. The silence that followed was complete. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Then, the chamber exploded into noise. Aliens chittered, warbled, and roared in a dozen different languages. Some were angry, some were shocked. A few even sounded pleased. Thexana's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. You cannot survive without council protection. The Void Hunters will destroy you. The trade routes will be closed to you. Jake smiled for the first time in months. We will take our chances. He turned and walked toward the exit. Lisa followed close behind, her hand on her weapon. The alien voices grew louder behind them, but no one tried to stop them. As they reached the door, Jake turned back one last time. Good luck explaining to your people why their food supplies just got cut in half, he called out, and why their hospitals do not work anymore, and why their machines keep breaking down. Then he walked out of the Galactic Council chambers for the last time. The real chaos was just beginning. Dr. Kevin Wright stood in his laboratory on Science Station Alpha, looking at the collection of alien artifacts that had taken him 20 years to gather. Each piece represented a breakthrough in human understanding of galactic technology. Each one had been studied, reverse-engineered, and improved upon by human scientists. Now he was packing them all up. Are we really taking everything? Asked his assistant, Dr. Maria Santos. She held a Kalani bioscanner that could detect diseases at the cellular level. Human doctors had used similar devices to save millions of alien lives. Everything, Kevin confirmed. Every sample, every device, every piece of data. If it came from human research or human innovation, it goes with us. The evacuation order had been clear. Within 6 months, every human in council space would return to human territory. No exceptions, no delays. Earth's new government wanted to make sure the aliens understood exactly what they were losing. On the other side of the galaxy, Admiral Carol Hayes was coordinating the largest fleet movement in human history. Ships of every size and type were converging on the Sol system and the Outer Rim colonies. Military vessels escorted cargo haulers full of people and equipment. Colony ships that had been humanity's homes for decades were being prepared for the long journey to independence. Status report, Carol ordered from the bridge of her flagship, the Earth's Pride. Transport Group 7 is 2 hours behind schedule, reported her communications officer. Engine problems on one of the colony ships. Send the repair ship Dawn's light to assist, Carol decided. I want everyone out of council space on time. The aliens were watching, of course. Their ships followed the human evacuation fleets at a safe distance, probably trying to figure out what humanity was planning. The smart ones were starting to worry. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, Supervisor Kelthera was discovering just how much the colony had depended on human expertise. The fusion reactors that powered the main cities were making strange noises. Normally, she would call the human engineering teams to check them, but the humans were gone. "Can we not fix these ourselves?" she asked her chief engineer. "The designs are too complex," he admitted. "The humans modified them 17 times over the past 8 years. Each modification built on the previous one. We do not understand how they work anymore." It was the same story across the galaxy. Human agricultural specialists had developed new crop strains that could grow in alien soil. Human doctors had created treatments for diseases that had plagued alien species for centuries. Human engineers had found ways to make ancient alien machinery work better than ever. The aliens had always assumed they could replace human knowledge with their own superior wisdom. They were wrong. Chancellor Vextar stood in his office on the Vorthan homeworld, reading reports from across the Empire. Food production was down 15%. Medical facilities were struggling with equipment failures. 3 space stations had gone dark when their power systems failed. "How long until we can train our own people to replace the humans?" he asked his advisor. "Years," was the honest answer. "Maybe decades." The humans did not just follow instructions. They improvised. They found solutions that were not in any manual. Vextar crushed the datapad in his mechanical hand. The Vorthans prided themselves on logic and efficiency. How had they missed something so important? Back in human space, the evacuation was nearly complete. Captain Steve Collins had just delivered the last group of human civilians from the Andromeda trade station. They were researchers who had been studying alien culture and technology. Now, they would use that knowledge to help humanity stand on its own. "How are our new territories looking?" Steve asked Admiral Hayes during their debriefing. "Better than expected," Carol replied. "The Outer Rim worlds have resources the Council never bothered to explore. We are finding mineral deposits that could fuel our civilization for centuries." It was true. While the aliens had focused on the comfortable inner systems, humans had been pushed to the edges of known space. Those edges turned out to be rich, with opportunities that the Council species had overlooked. Dr. Wright had set up his new laboratory on Frontier Base, a human outpost 300 light-years from the nearest Council world. He was already at work, analyzing the alien technology they had brought with them. "Look at this," he told Maria, pointing to a Zephyrian power cell. "They use quantum resonance to store energy, but they never thought to modify the resonance frequency. If we adjust it by just 2%, we can double the storage capacity." Maria studied the readings. "Will it still be compatible with their systems?" Kevin smiled. "Who cares? We are not building technology for them anymore. We are building it for us." That was the key insight that had taken humanity years to understand. They had been trying to fit into alien systems instead of creating their own. Now they were free to innovate without worrying about Council approval or alien sensibilities. On Earth, President Rachel Morris was meeting with the leaders of the Independent Human Alliance. The IHA was the new government that would represent all human colonies and settlements. It was smaller than the Council, but it was truly democratic. Every human settlement got a voice. "Production reports from the Outer Rim are encouraging," reported Economic Minister Dan Foster. "The mining operations on Wolf 359 are exceeding all projections. The agricultural colonies are not just feeding themselves, they are producing surplus food." "What about defense?" asked Military Coordinator Amy Patterson. "Our fleets are smaller than what the Council can field," Admiral Hayes admitted via hologram. "But they are more advanced. Without Council restrictions on military technology, we have been able to implement designs that were banned for being too dangerous." The aliens had always been afraid of human military innovation. Humans had a talent for finding new ways to break things. The Council had spent decades making sure that talent was carefully controlled. Now it was unleashed. The first signs of real trouble came 3 months after the human evacuation. A colony trade convoy got lost when their navigation systems failed. Normally, human traffic controllers would have guided them to safety. Instead, the convoy drifted for 6 days before a rescue ship found them. On Nexus Prime, Thexana was reading casualty reports from across Council space. Equipment failures were causing accidents. Medical emergencies were becoming fatal because alien doctors could not operate human-designed equipment. Food shortages were sparking riots on 3 worlds. "Perhaps we should contact the humans," suggested her aide. "Ask them to return some of their technical specialists." Thexana's scales turned dark red. "We do not need the humans. We managed perfectly well before they arrived." But that was not quite true. The galaxy had been stagnant before humans joined the Council. The same technologies, the same solutions, the same problems. Humans had brought change, innovation, and growth. Without them, the Council was discovering that it had no idea how to move forward. In the Outer Rim, humanity was thriving. Free from Council oversight, human scientists were making breakthroughs at an incredible pace. Human engineers were building ships and stations that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Human farmers were turning barren worlds into gardens. They were also preparing for war, because everyone knew the aliens would not let them go easily. The Council had never tolerated independence, and they would not start now. Sooner or later, they would send fleets to bring humanity back into line. Humanity would be ready. Admiral Hayes stood on the observation deck of Frontier Base, watching human ships patrol the border between human space and Council territory. They were good ships, crewed by people who had chosen freedom over comfort. "Let them come," she said quietly. "We will show them what humans can really do when they are not holding us back." The evacuation was complete. The real test was about to begin. When the distortions finally faded, human space appeared normal on all sensors. But no 18 months after humanity fell silent, the Galactic Council detected massive energy signatures from the direction of human space. The readings were unlike anything in their databases. Quantum fluctuations that suggested the fundamental structure of space-time was being rewritten on a galactic scale. The first transmission they received came from a heavily damaged ship at the edge of human territory. The vessel's identification codes were human, but something about its design seemed wrong, as if it had been built according to principles that normal physics should not allow. Colonel Danny Rivers appeared on the communication screen, but his image flickered and distorted in ways that hurt to look at directly. His voice carried strange harmonics that seemed to come from multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Galactic Council," he said, his words carrying weight that pressed against the minds of everyone listening. "This is Colonel Rivers of the Human Defense Force. The immediate threat has been neutralized. The quantum parasites have been destroyed, and their masters have been turned back at the edge of our galaxy." The Council chamber erupted in confusion and relief. Council Speaker Vorthak stepped forward to respond. "Colonel Rivers, we are grateful for your message. Can you explain what happened? Where have the humans been for the past 18 months? Danny's image flickered again, and for a moment he appeared to exist in several places at once. "We fought a war for the survival of consciousness itself. The parasites you encountered were advanced scouts for something far worse, a hive mind that has consumed 17 other galaxies." He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried echoes of billions of other human voices speaking in perfect unison. "We stopped them, but the cost was significant. Humanity has been fundamentally changed by what we had to do." Ambassador Krextal of the Vrillon Empire leaned forward. "Changed how? What exactly did you do to defeat this threat?" Danny's response sent chills through every being in the council chamber. "We became something between individual minds and a collective consciousness. Every human being on every world volunteered to link their consciousness in a quantum resonance pattern that exists partially outside normal space-time. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. The Zathari representative Silthara spoke in a trembling voice. "You merged 8 billion minds into a single entity?" "Not exactly," Danny replied. "We remain individuals, but we are also permanently connected to a species-wide consciousness. We can still think and act independently, but we are always aware of each other's thoughts and experiences." Elder Sathanal, the Zathari telepath who had barely survived his attempt to reach human space, suddenly understood why his mind had nearly shattered. "That is what I sensed," he whispered. "Not emptiness, but consciousness so vast and interconnected that my individual mind could not comprehend it." President Kelly Morgan joined the transmission, her image equally distorted and multidimensional. "The quantum resonance we created disrupted the parasites' coherence and forced their masters back into the void between galaxies. The immediate threat to this galaxy has been eliminated." Council Speaker Vorthak struggled to process what he was hearing. "You saved us all. The entire galactic community owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid." Kelly's expression was sad and distant. "The debt has already been paid in full. We are no longer the species you once knew. The transformation was necessary, but it came with a price that affects everyone." Dr. Michelle Thompson appeared alongside the other human representatives, her form shifting between solid matter and pure energy. "We have gained the ability to perceive and interact with quantum realities that would drive other species insane. Our enhanced consciousness creates feedback loops that can shatter unprepared minds." The terrible truth became clear. Humans could no longer safely interact with other conscious species without risking contamination or madness. Their enhanced quantum awareness operated on frequencies that normal minds were not equipped to handle. "We have become something that can no longer truly be called human," Michelle continued. "We exist partially in dimensions that other species cannot access. Direct contact with us could damage or destroy normal consciousness." Ambassador Piptel of the Minthari spoke with tears in her large eyes. "So you saved us all, but can never rejoin the galactic community?" Danny nodded grimly. "Human space is now under permanent quarantine. We can communicate through heavily shielded channels like this one, but physical contact is impossible. Our presence would be toxic to other forms of consciousness." The full scope of humanity's sacrifice began to sink in. They had not simply fought and won a war. They had voluntarily given up their place in galactic civilization to protect species that had never truly appreciated them. President Morgan explained. "The final battle. The hive mind that controlled the quantum parasites had consumed the consciousness of trillions of beings across 17 galaxies. It was patient, methodical, and absolutely unstoppable using conventional methods. The entity had been older than most star systems, possessing the combined knowledge of countless civilizations. It understood every form of technology, every method of warfare, every psychological weakness of thinking species. We realized that consciousness itself was the only weapon that could harm it," Morgan continued. "By linking every human mind into a single quantum resonance pattern, we created something the hive mind had never encountered. A collective consciousness that retained individual creativity and free will. The battle had taken place on levels of reality that normal physics could not describe. Human consciousness, enhanced and unified, had engaged the hive mind in direct conflict across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The hive mind was used to consuming passive consciousness," Danny explained. "It could not adapt to an aggressive collective that fought back with coordinated creativity. We disrupted its quantum coherence and forced it to retreat beyond the galactic rim. But victory had required the complete transformation of human nature. To generate enough quantum resonance to challenge the hive mind, every human being had to permanently link their consciousness to the species-wide collective. Dr. Thompson shared the final cost. We can still function as individuals, but we are always aware of each other's thoughts and experiences. Privacy, as other species understand it, no longer exists for us. We have become something unprecedented, a collective intelligence that maintains individual identity. The transformation had also affected human perception of reality. They could now see and interact with quantum structures that existed between dimensions. This ability made them incredibly powerful, but also dangerous to other forms of consciousness. Our enhanced awareness creates quantum interference patterns, Thompson explained. Direct exposure to human consciousness can cause madness, memory loss, or complete psychological breakdown in other species. The Galactic Council sat in stunned silence as the full implications became clear. Humanity had saved them all by becoming something that could never again be part of the civilization they had protected. Colonel Rivers delivered the final message. We will continue to monitor the galactic rim for signs of the hive mind's return. Our transformation has made us capable of detecting threats that operate across multiple dimensions. We are now the galaxy's early warning system against dangers that normal science cannot perceive. He paused, and for a moment his form became more solid, more recognizably human. We ask only that you remember us as we were, not as what we had to become. We were loud, chaotic, and impossible to ignore. We asked too many questions and suggested too many wild ideas. But we cared about others more than ourselves. President Morgan added the final words. The galaxy is safe now, but the cost was everything that made us part of your community. We chose to become guardians rather than neighbors, protectors rather than friends. Remember that humans once laughed, cried, loved, and dreamed. Remember that we chose this fate willingly so that others could continue to experience those things. The transmission ended, leaving the Galactic Council in absolute silence. For the first time in their history, the various species truly understood what they had lost when humanity fell quiet. The Vrillon Empire's greatest warriors wept for the first time in their species' history. The logical Thoraxians admitted that mathematics could not measure the value of such sacrifice. The telepathic Zathari felt the echo of humanity's transformation and understood that they had witnessed something beyond their ability to comprehend. Council Speaker Vorthak stood slowly, his massive frame trembling with emotion. Let it be recorded in the permanent archives that humanity saved the galaxy by sacrificing their own nature. They died as one species and were reborn as something else entirely, all to protect those who had never truly appreciated them. The memorial they erected bore a simple inscription. Here lies humanity as we knew them. They lived so that we might hope. They died so that we might live. They transformed so that consciousness itself might survive. In the end, they fell silent not from weakness, but because they were busy doing something too terrible and necessary for anyone else to understand. The galaxy learned to fear not the darkness between the stars, but the silence that followed when humanity stopped talking. The delegation ships appeared at the edge of the Sol system without warning, their hulls bearing the colors of every major council species. Thexana herself led the fleet in her personal command vessel, a massive Zephyrian dreadnought that had once seemed intimidating to human eyes. Now, it just looked desperate. President Rachel Morris received the aliens in the conference room of Luna Base, the orbital station that had become the capital of the Independent Human Alliance. The irony was not lost on anyone present. The same species that had dismissed humans as too primitive to govern themselves were now meeting in a facility that showcased human engineering at its finest. Thexana entered the room with her usual dignity, but Morris could see the defeat in her posture. The proud Zephyrian's scales were dull gray, the color of exhaustion and humiliation. Behind her came Chancellor Vextar of the Vorthons, and High Admiral Kelthara of the Kalani Federation. They had all come personally. The leaders of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy had traveled to human space to beg for help. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us," Thexana began, her voice lacking its usual arrogance. Morris gestured to the chairs around the conference table. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." The aliens took their seats awkwardly. The furniture had been designed for humans and did not quite fit their different anatomies. It was another small reminder of whose territory they were in now. "The situation is grave," Chancellor Vextar said without preamble. "The Void Hunters have taken 43 star systems. Our combined fleets are in full retreat. Traditional strategies have proven completely ineffective. Your people have achieved what we thought impossible," Admiral Kelthara added. "You have defeated them in direct combat, multiple times." Morris nodded. She had been expecting this conversation for weeks. "Our methods are effective because we do not think like you do. We do not follow the same rules." "We understand that now," Thexana admitted. It was perhaps the most difficult sentence she had ever spoken. "We were wrong about your species. We underestimated your capabilities." "You did more than underestimate us," Morris replied calmly. "You exiled us. You told us we were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too primitive for civilized space. You made it clear that we would never be welcome among you." The alien leaders shifted uncomfortably. They remembered their own words, their own certainty that humanity had nothing to offer the galaxy. "We need your help," Vextar said bluntly. "Without it, the Void Hunters will consume everything. Billions will die." "And if we refuse?" Morris asked. "Then we all perish together," Thexana replied, "including humanity." It was a fair point. The Void Hunters would not stop with Council space. Once they finished consuming the established civilizations, they would turn their attention to the Outer Rim, where humanity had made its new home. Morris looked around the table at her own advisors. Admiral Hayes was present via hologram, coordinating the war effort from the front lines. Defense Secretary Carter sat to her right, while Economic Minister Foster took notes on a data pad. "We will help," Morris said finally, "but not under the old system. Not as junior partners begging for scraps from your table." "What do you propose?" asked Kelthara. "A new galactic order," Morris replied. "One based on equality rather than hierarchy. One that values innovation over tradition. One that recognizes that different ways of thinking make us all stronger." The aliens exchanged glances. They were being asked to abandon the system that had governed the galaxy for 10,000 years. "You want us to restructure the entire council," Thexana said slowly. "I want you to replace it," Morris corrected. "The Galactic Council failed because it was built on the assumption that some species are naturally superior to others. The new organization must be based on the principle that every civilization has something valuable to contribute." Chancellor Vextar processed this with his usual Vorthan logic. "You are proposing a confederation rather than a hierarchy, shared leadership rather than dominant species." "Exactly," Morris confirmed. "Technology sharing agreements, joint research projects, military cooperation based on mutual respect rather than subordination, and recognition of human sovereignty over our chosen territories," added Defense Secretary Carter. The aliens had expected demands for reparations or punishment. Instead, they were being offered partnership. It was more generous than they had any right to expect. "Done?" Thexana said without hesitation. "Whatever you require." The war that followed became the stuff of legend. For the first time in galactic history, different species worked together as true equals. Human chaos theory tactics combined with alien resources and technological expertise created something unprecedented. The Kalani provided biotechnology that let human soldiers survive in the vacuum of space. The Vorthans offered computational power that helped human commanders process battlefield information in real time. The Zephyrians contributed shield technology that could adapt to any threat. In return, humans shared their greatest gift with the galaxy, the ability to think outside established patterns. Captain Jenny Walsh led the assault on the Void Hunter. Primary Node, a massive mechanical construct at the heart of their invasion fleet. Her task force included ships from a dozen different species, all following human tactical doctrine. "Remember," she told her mixed crew over the communication system, "we are not trying to destroy them through superior firepower. We are trying to confuse them into destroying themselves." The plan was insane by any reasonable standard. Walsh intended to fly her fleet directly into the heart of the Void Hunter formation, then split up and attack in every direction at once. The goal was not to win through superior strategy, but to feed the enemy collective mind so much chaotic information that it would overload. "This will either work brilliantly or kill us all," observed Commander Zextel, a Zephyrian officer who had volunteered for the mission. "Those are the best kind of plans," Walsh replied with a grin that was becoming typically human. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Void Hunter ships found themselves under attack from enemies that seemed to ignore basic physics. Human vessels appeared and disappeared at random, striking from impossible angles before vanishing again. But this time, they were not fighting alone. Alien ships followed their lead, abandoning careful formations in favor of creative chaos. A Kalani cruiser used its biotechnology to disguise itself as an asteroid, then opened fire when Void Hunter ships tried to consume it. A Vorthan destroyer calculated the exact trajectory needed to ram an enemy command ship while its crew escaped in life pods. The Void Hunter collective mind, designed to process logical patterns and predict rational behavior, began to break down under the assault of pure chaos. Error messages cascaded through their network as they tried to understand enemies that refused to follow any comprehensible pattern. "Target the primary node," Walsh ordered as her ship broke through the enemy formation. "All ships, full assault!" The combined fleet descended on the Void Hunter command structure like a swarm of angry insects. Each ship attacked differently, using tactics that would have been impossible under the old Council doctrine. There was no coordination, no grand strategy, just intelligent beings making split-second decisions based on their own judgment. It was beautiful chaos, and it was devastating. The primary node tried to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. Every time it analyzed one attack pattern, the attackers changed to something completely different. The mechanical intelligence that had consumed dozens of civilizations found itself unable to cope with enemies that refused to be predictable. The explosion when the primary node finally overloaded was visible from 3-star systems away. With their central command destroyed, the remaining Void Hunter ships lost coordination and began attacking each other as their programming collapsed. The war was over. In the aftermath, as rescue ships searched for survivors and engineers began rebuilding damaged worlds, the galaxy took stock of what had changed. The old Galactic Council was gone, replaced by the United Galactic Federation, an organization based on the radical principle that all sapient species were equal partners. Jake Morrison, the human ambassador who had walked away from the council chambers in anger, was elected as the Federation's first Secretary General. It was a position that rotated between species every 5 years, ensuring that no one civilization could dominate the others. "How does it feel?" asked Thexana at the inauguration ceremony. The former council speaker had been elected as the Federation's first military coordinator, a role that put her in charge of preventing future threats. Finally activating it. The signal would take hours to reach human space, and there was no guarantee the humans would even rest. The message reached Earth 3 days after the fall of the Zephyrian homeworld. President Rachel Morris read it twice, before calling an emergency meeting of the Human Alliance Council. The aliens were begging for help, offering everything they had previously denied humanity in exchange for assistance against the Void Hunters. "They must be desperate," observed Secretary of Defense Bill Carter. This message came from Thexana herself, the same alien who called us primitive savages 6 months ago. Morris set down the communication pad and looked around the table at the human leaders. They represented colonies and settlements scattered across dozens of star systems, all united by their shared experience of alien condescension. "The question is, do we help them?" she asked. "Why should we?" demanded Governor Lisa Kim of the Outer Rim Territories. "They threw us out. They said we were too dangerous for civilized space. Let them handle their own problems." Admiral Hayes leaned forward. "Because if the Void Hunters finish with Council space, they will come for us next. This is not about helping the aliens. This is about survival." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Humans did not abandon people in need, even people who had abandoned them first. It was one of the things that made them different from the aliens. "We help," Morris decided, "but on our terms." The human response reached Council space just as the Void Hunters were beginning their assault on Nexus Prime itself. The message was brief and to the point. "We will assist. Prepare to follow human tactical doctrine. Admiral Hayes will coordinate joint operations." Thexana read the message with a mixture of relief and humiliation. The proud Zephyrian leader would have to take orders from the same species she had dismissed as too primitive for galactic civilization. But pride was a luxury the galaxy could no longer afford. The first joint operation took place at the Rigel system, where a Void Hunter fleet was advancing on the last major Council shipyard. Admiral Hayes arrived with a modest force of 30 human ships, facing a Void Hunter armada of over 200 vessels. The aliens who witnessed the battle would talk about it for generations. Hayes did not arrange her ships in the traditional formations that Council tacticians had perfected over millennia. Instead, she scattered them across the system in what looked like random positions. Some ships hid behind planets, others drifted among asteroid fields. A few actually landed on the surface of moons, powering down to appear abandoned. "What is she doing?" demanded Admiral Zethkor, watching from the Council command ship. "This is chaos, not strategy." "Exactly," Hayes replied over the communication channel. "Chaos is the point. The Void Hunters arrived expecting another traditional battle. Their tactical computers had analyzed thousands of Council engagements and predicted exactly how the defense would be organized. They moved in perfect coordination, their mechanical minds processing every variable and calculating the optimal attack pattern. Then the humans opened fire from 12 different directions at once. Ships that had appeared dead suddenly burst to life, launching missiles from impossible angles. Vessels that should have been trapped in gravity, well, somehow escaped and struck from behind. The carefully planned Void Hunter assault dissolved into confusion as they found themselves under attack from enemies that should not have been able to reach them. "How are they doing this?" asked the Void Hunter collective mind, speaking through captured communication systems. The answer came from Commander Ryan Brooks, whose ship had just emerged from inside a gas giant's atmosphere. "We are doing it because you told us it was impossible. Humans like proving people wrong." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Void Hunter fleet was destroyed and the shipyard was saved. The human losses were minimal, mostly because they had refused to fight fair. "Explain your tactics," Admiral Zethkor requested after the battle. Hayes smiled. "There are no tactics. That is the tactic. Every engagement is different. Every captain makes their own decisions based on what they see, not what some manual tells them to do." It was a concept that alien minds struggled to understand. How could you coordinate a fleet if everyone was making their own plans? How could you predict the outcome if there was no structure? The answer was that you could not predict the outcome, and that was exactly why it worked. Dr. Wright had been studying the Void Hunter network since the data from Steve Collins's sacrifice became available. He had made a discovery that changed how humans approached the war. "They are not just machines," he explained to a gathering of human commanders. "They are a collective intelligence, but one based on logical patterns. Every action triggers a response according to programmed rules. They can learn, but only within the parameters of their programming." Captain Jenny Walsh raised her hand. "So, What does that mean for us? It means we can confuse them, Wright replied. If we do things that do not fit their logic patterns, their collective mind tries to process it and gets stuck, like a computer trying to divide by zero. This led to the development of what humans called chaos theory tactics. The goal was not just to win battles, but to feed the Void Hunter collective mind information that would crash their decision-making systems. Human ships began doing things that made no military sense. They would retreat when they were winning. They would charge when they should have run. They would waste ammunition on empty space or save it when they desperately needed firepower. To alien observers, it looked like insanity. To the Void Hunters, it was incomprehensible. Their collective intelligence spent more and more processing power trying to understand human behavior, leaving less available for actual combat coordination. The war began to turn. The Battle of New Terra became a legend throughout human space. The colony world was under siege by the largest Void Hunter fleet ever assembled, over 5,000 ships arranged in perfect geometric formations around the planet. Captain Collins had died at Proxima Station, but his example inspired others. Captain Walsh arrived with a fleet of modified cargo ships, each one packed with explosives and piloted by volunteers. "This is insane," observed the Kalani admiral, who was monitoring the battle. "They are going to ram capital ships with cargo. Haulers." "No," corrected Admiral Hayes, who was coordinating the defense. "They are going to do something much worse than that." As the cargo ships approached the Void Hunter fleet, they began to break apart. But they were not being destroyed. They were shedding their cargo containers, each one programmed with a different flight path and target. The Void Hunters found themselves facing not 30 ships, but 3,000 individual projectiles, all moving in unpredictable patterns. Their point defense systems, designed to intercept incoming missiles, could not track so many chaotic targets at once. The cargo containers smashed into the Void Hunter ships like a meteor storm. Most did little damage individually, but the cumulative effect was devastating. More importantly, the collective mind was overwhelmed trying to process the attack. While the Void Hunters struggled to understand what was happening, the real human fleet struck from the opposite direction. They had been hiding behind New Terra's moon, waiting for their enemies to be distracted. "Now that," said Admiral Hayes with satisfaction, "is how you fight a war." But the humans were not just winning through chaos. They were learning from every engagement, adapting faster than their enemies could compensate. Human engineers were reverse engineering Void Hunter technology and finding ways to improve it. Amy Patterson had developed a new type of weapon that used Void Hunter energy absorption principles against them. The feedback cannon would overload the enemy's power systems by feeding them more energy than they could process. "It is like forcing someone to drink from a fire hose," she explained to her engineering team. Eventually, they drowned. The weapons were crude compared to Council technology, but they worked, and that was all that mattered to humans. Meanwhile, the aliens were slowly learning to fight alongside their former enemies. The Council species could not think like humans, but they could follow human orders and provide the resources that human creativity needed. Zephyrian shield technology combined with human tactical flexibility created defensive formations that could adapt in real time to enemy attacks. Vorthan computational power helped human commanders process battlefield information faster than ever before. Kalani biotechnology enabled human soldiers to survive in environments that would have killed them otherwise. It was not the partnership the Council had originally envisioned, with aliens teaching humans to be civilized. Instead, it was humans teaching aliens to be unpredictable. The tide of war began to shift as human tactics spread throughout the galaxy. Alien commanders who had spent centuries following rigid doctrines were forced to improvise, to take risks, to think outside the patterns that had defined galactic warfare for millennia. Some of them were surprisingly good at it. General Kex Vara of the Kalani Defense Force shocked everyone, including herself, when she successfully used human-style hit-and-run tactics to destroy a Void Hunter supply convoy. "I do not understand how it worked," she admitted afterward. "I just did what felt right, instead of what the manual said." That was the secret humans had been trying to teach the galaxy.